Hey everybody, it's Adam Farkas. Welcome back to another edition of ODwire TV. Now, about a decade ago, Alcon launched the DAILIES TOTAL1 contact lens, and it shook up the market back then as a premium lens. And for a while, there was just the sphere that was available. Then in 2016, Alcon released the DAILIES TOTAL1 Multifocal for folks with presbyopia. Which was great. It had this, what they call the unique precision profile design for multifocal lenses that provide predictable, seamless vision at all distances. But as you know, on ODwire and in these broadcasts, it's almost a running gag at this point that whenever anybody releases a new lens, the next question is, where's the toric, right? I've got all these patients with astigmatism. I can't use this lens. I need the toric lens. Where is it? Well, today I have an important announcement. The toric is here. DAILIES TOTAL1 for astigmatism is here. The toric is available, and so now basically they've rounded out their line of lenses, right? So you have spherical, you have toric, you have multifocal. And to talk all about the new toric lens today, and also to talk about the DAILIES TOTAL1 line in general, we have Dr. Scott Gunderson with us. So Scott's a graduate of the UC Berkeley School of Optometry. He also received specialty training in the co-management of glaucoma, cataract, and corneal surgery when he was with Omni. And he's also received specialty training in the management of dry eye, diabetic eye disease, and glaucoma at VA clinics in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and Sacramento, California. He opened Clarity Eye in Thornton, Colorado, which is just a little bit north of Denver proper, a little over a decade ago in May 2011. And at Clarity, he practices full-scope optometry and sees a variety of patients of all ages, which is why he's the perfect person, actually, to talk about DAILIES TOTAL1 today. So, Scott, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And I'd like to also just issue a couple of disclosures here. This episode is sponsored by Alcon, and Dr. Gunderson has been compensated by Alcon for participating. And I would also like to issue a further disclosure while I am here that I have been wearing DAILIES TOTAL1 lenses since they became commercially available all those years ago. And as sort of I've aged and my arms have gotten shorter, I actually also wear the multifocal version of the lens now. So I also have a great deal of experience with it.
Well, I'm excited to hear your input then.
Yep. So, this lens, means a lot to me personally, right? Just because I've been wearing it for so long. And I guess, my question to you would be, in your own practice, what have you experienced, right, since this lens actually has been released?
Honestly, this lens has been a real practice changer for me. I've had so many patients who previously were not able to wear contacts or maybe hadn't even thought of contacts who are able to wear this lens and do really well with it. So it's really been a practice builder for me.
And in terms of the kinds of patients that you're actually fitting in the lens, what's sort of your ideal candidate if you had to picture someone?
When I first started using this lens, I think it was really tempting for me to view it as sort of a rescue lens, where if patients weren't doing well with other options, then I'd put them in this premium technology. And I've really lately tried to change the way that I think about that, because I've come to realize over time, if I'm not offering my patients latest technology, then there's a chance that I'm going to lose them either as a contact lens wearer or completely lose them from my practice because I didn't give them the options that I knew were available. So really, we've got patients that need this technology because they've had problems with other lenses, because they've had problems with contact lens related dryness. We've got patients of every age who spend all day staring at their phone, staring at the computer, and potentially drying out their eyes. So they need a lens with technology that will keep up with the needs of their eyes.
And I think everyone has seen, in the time that this lens has been out, the idea that there are patients who had been wearing lenses but dropped out, right? A certain number of people still do drop out of their lenses. What have you seen in your practice about taking those patients who maybe have dropped out before and refitting them into something like DAILIES TOTAL1?
That's honestly been a huge practice builder for me, because I've had plenty of patients who were either told by other offices that they couldn't wear contacts, or as you mentioned, they dropped out of contact lenses because of problems that they'd had. And especially today, we're specifically talking about the DAILIES TOTAL1 for astigmatism with its recent launch, but especially with astigmatism correcting lenses with torics, I've had so many patients who tried contacts 10 or 20 years ago, or even more recently before the newer technology was available, and they just didn't do well with them. So this has been a huge lens. The Dailies Total One in general has been a huge lens for me to get patients back into contact lens wear. And I'll bring up with them, the great thing about daily disposables is you can wear them as much or as little as you want. So this might end up being something that you wear really sparingly for certain activities, but if it's working well with you, you can wear it more. And I get a lot of these patients who start out as part-time wearers, but then they transition to more full-time wear because of how well they work.
And it's funny. My father, in his practice, he ran a contact lens specialty practice that was limited to contact lenses for 40 years. And when I worked there as a tech, one of the things that he always taught me was trying to elicit from patients things that they're not telling you, to try to sort of tease it out of them to give them a better experience. So, and I wonder in the context of this lens, if you have patients maybe who aren't telling you things, do you ever sort of try to get it out of them to see if this newer technology would be a better fit for them?
Absolutely. That's a really great point that you bring up. I believe one study that I'm aware of, 50% of contact lens wearers experience some level of dryness. So if during the course of a day or a week in our practice, we aren't hearing those complaints from 50% of our contact lens patients, chances are we're not asking the right questions. And we really do have to ask the right questions. If we just ask them, are you happy with your contacts, or are your contact lenses dry? It's going to be really easy for them to just say that they're fine, right? But if we can ask questions that are more telling to us, for example, how long are you able to wear your contacts before they start feeling dry? Or what time do you take your contacts out in the evening? Those are the sorts of questions that might not mean very much to them, but they'll mean more to us. The fact of the matter is, our patients are willing to put up with a lot if that allows them to keep wearing contacts. So they'll just rack it up to normal problems. Oh, I'm just a little bit tired. I didn't get enough sleep last night. Oh, I'm staring at the computer screen a lot. This is just normal. But we're the professionals. We're the ones who know what's normal and we know what's possible. So we have to ask those questions to figure out if our patients are receiving the experience that we know they should have.
And I think one thing that we haven't really discussed, we've spoken a little bit about Dailies Total One in general, but getting down to brass tacks, specifically talking about the technology behind it, right? Why does it give everyone a good experience? And maybe we want to talk a little bit about the tech behind it to remind people what makes the lens so different and special.
Well, Dailies Total One material has two main pieces of technology that make it so comfortable for our patients. The first one is water gradient technology, which, as a reminder, means that the center of the lens, the core of the lens, has a water content around 33%. And that allows for amazing oxygen permeability of this lens. The surface of the lens transitions to a water content almost at 100% at the surface. So this lens marries the amazing oxygen content at the core, but then also gives us the 100%, nearly 100% water content at the surface for amazing comfort. The second type of technology that we get from the Dailies Total One material is called SmarTears technology. With this technology, the lens releases phosphatidylcholine, which is actually an element found in natural tears, human tears, and it actually helps to stabilize the lipid layer of the tear film.
And in fact, there are other tests that they've done in the laboratory as well, correct?
There are. Actually, recently, Alcon has put more research into studying what's called shear stress. Shear stress is what occurs when two surfaces are rubbing against each other. And they found that shear stress can be decreased both by making the materials that are rubbing against each other more soft and also by decreasing the friction between the two. So first, talking about the softness of Dailies Total One, we would know that in the eye care world as the modulus of the lens. Compared to several other competitor lenses, Dailies Total One was found to be 5 times softer than the competition. In fact, the softness of Dailies Total One was very close to the softness of the human cornea. The other study that Alcon has conducted on shear stress has to do with lack of friction, or in the eye care world, lubricity. Alcon found that DAILIES TOTAL1 was far more lubricious than competition lens. So now we've got a material, the DAILIES TOTAL1 material, that not only is softer than the competition, but it's also more lubricious. Lubricity, to remind us, is actually the inverse of friction. So as friction goes down, lubricity goes up. So we've got a lens with more softness, less friction, less shear stress, which in studies has been shown to result in less damage to epithelial cells. For this study, they created an industry standard membrane. On top of that membrane, they placed the contact lens in question, and then they rubbed that contact lens against epithelial cells to see what sort of damage was created. They controlled for pressure to make sure it was similar pressure to what would be created through the interaction of the eyelid and the contact lens against the corneal epithelium. And what we see here is that the baseline damage with no contact lens sliding back and forth was 7 cells per millimeter squared. DAILIES TOTAL1 was barely above that, only 12 cells per millimeter squared. And then you look at the competition here below, and we're jumping up by factors of 10 or more to get up to 137, 155, 321. So significantly more damage being created to these epithelial cells through these other materials that have a higher modulus and a lower lubricity.
And if we kind of look at the DAILIES TOTAL1 lens against, other competitors in the market, what does that end up looking like?
DAILIES TOTAL1 has been examined both with in vitro studies as well as head-to-head studies. First, let me talk a little bit about the laboratory or in vitro performance of the lens. In one particular study, DAILIES TOTAL1 went up against other lenses such as Infuse, AccuView Oasis 1 Day, BioTrue 1 Day, and AccuView 1 Day Moist, Clarity 1 Day, My Day, basically all the major competitors, and was found to resist drying out well beyond what the competition was in this particular study. And in this study, the lens was soaked in a solution for about 16 hours, each of the lenses, and then it was removed from the bath, and the surface of the lens was observed for de-wetting. And as soon as the lens began to de-wet, the timer went off. And if we look at the numbers from that study, most of the lenses are in the single digits or maybe the teens as far as how many seconds it took for them to start de-wetting. Whereas DAILIES TOTAL1 made it all the way to 39 seconds. It was almost 2 or 3 times as long as the closest competition. Actually, the closest lens to DAILIES TOTAL1 in that study was Precision 1, which is another Alcon water surface product.
Right.
So as much as I love that really cool circular bar graph that Alcon made, I actually really love these videos. I think if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then maybe a video is worth 1,000,000 words. I don't know. But if you look at the video here, you'll see starting in the upper left, that lens is going to start to de-wet first. And then as you go across that row to the right, you'll see them continue to de-wet, each one just a few seconds after the next. Well, once all 6 of these competitor lenses have de-wetted, you'll look over to the right-hand window where DAILIES TOTAL1 is, and you're going to think that the video maybe isn't actually playing because it goes for so long before it actually starts to de-wet. And frankly, even when it starts to de-wet, it's almost hard to notice that it did. Thankfully, the people running the studies were being very particular about it so that they could catch that the lens had de-wetted. But compared to what the other lens surfaces do, DAILIES TOTAL1 hardly even moves, even at that, 39-second point.
Absolutely. Now, all of these studies, of course, are in vitro, right? So they're in the lab. What about where sort of the rubber meets the road with reality and people putting the lens on their eye? Have there been any studies sort of the lens in that context, using it for real.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm right with you on that, Adam. When my contact lens rep comes in and talks to me about all these in vitro studies, I'll smile and nod my head. But at the end of the day, what we really want to know is, how is this lens going to actually act on our patient's eyes? So Alcon studied that as well. And in one survey, nearly 9 out of 10 patients agreed that Dailies Total1 contacts are so comfortable that they sometimes forget they're even wearing the contacts. And I can certainly speak to that myself. My biggest surprise with this lens has been how quick and easy it is to fit in my office. I'm so accustomed to putting contact lens on patients' eyes or having them put them on themselves, depending on the situation, and then having to try to buy several minutes of time there in the office. And really what I've found with Dailies Total1, whether it's the sphere, the multifocal, or now the toric, I'm thrilled and surprised at how quickly those lenses are able to settle on the patient's eye so that we can move on with the exam. Talking about more of these kind of head-to-head studies, which is huge when we talk about the demands of our patients these days and how much we're all looking at screens, whether it's a phone or a computer. And I don't know about you, I've got 4 kids. I'm living long days here, Adam. So if I don't have a lens that's going to be able to keep up with that wearing cycle, I'm going to find myself taking it off earlier than I'd like to, or potentially just getting out of contacts in general.
Right. And you mentioned earlier the comparison of the Dailies Total1 versus other lenses in vitro. Again, back out in the real world, what are you actually seeing?
I know a lot of us like to compare Dailies Total1 with AccuView Oasis One Day. And actually, several studies show that Dailies Total1 water gradient contact lenses outperform AccuView Oasis One Day with Hydrolux on several key attributes, including superior end-of-day comfort, superior lubricity after 16 hours of wear, and superior tear film stability with 3 times less tear film breakup. So definitely, whether it's an in vitro study or an actual head-to-head wearing study, Dailies Total1 has measured up really well, right? I'll do a check-in after a couple of minutes to see where we are, trying to figure out how much time I need to buy before we can move on with the exam. And most of the time, if it's been at least a minute or two and I check in with the patients, they'll tell me, oh, I'm doing great. And that's really been my experience with this lens. And that's probably been my biggest surprise.
Let's talk a little bit about the toric lens now, right? I think that's probably why most people are watching this at this point, right? Because as we're touting in the little title above here, right, we're going to talk about astigmatism a bit. We're going to talk about the toric lens that everyone's been waiting for. So you have experience with Dailies Total1 for astigmatism. Maybe you could talk us through what the lens has been like for you.
Definitely. First, I just want to talk a little bit about astigmatism lenses in general. I think this is why there's so much excitement surrounding the release of Dailies Total1 for astigmatism. If you look at the statistics, about 47% of our patients have enough astigmatism, meaning at least 3/4 of a diopter, to consider wearing a toric lens in at least one of their eyes. But out of these, half of all of our patients, only 10% of them are actually wearing soft toric lenses. Actually, more than twice that number, about 22% of them, are wearing spherical contact lenses instead. So that's what I've been really excited about with the Dailies Total1 for astigmatism, is to have a lens that I know I can trust. I think you've got some statistics that you were going to put up that talk about what I referenced earlier, that in one particular study, about 35% of spherical contact lens wearers experienced dryness, about 26% end-of-day discomfort. Those numbers go up to 42% dryness for toric wearers and 35% end-of-day discomfort. So we just know that the possibility for discomfort with contact lenses is greater with the toric lenses. Honestly, the first patient I ever put this lens on, and I keep saying I'm trying to get Alcon to use this as a marketing phrase, but they just won't do it. But the first patient who, and I'm joking about that, the first patient who put this lens on in my office, their immediate response to it was, This lens is stupid comfortable.
Right.
And that's really been my experience overall, is that patients are thrilled with how comfortable they are.
Let's talk a little bit about the toric design, right? Because I think this is something that people also want to know about. What is it like actually fitting this lens? So I'll put up a little picture. Maybe you can speak to the design a little bit.
Well, first I'd like to speak to that picture. Of course, this lens is built with the same precision balance 8.4 technology that we have known and loved with other Alcon lenses. It's going to settle in 37 seconds on average, that it's going to settle to within 2 degrees of ideal orientation and oscillate less than 3 degrees with a blink. And I can tell you, when I first got my hands on these lenses and I'd seen that claim of 37 seconds average settling time, I actually took it to the test and I pulled out my phone, I pulled up the stopwatch function, and I actually started that stopwatch. And if I'm being honest, I did give a full minute, but even a 1 minute settling time would be huge for my practice, just to speed things up and have less chair time. And I can honestly tell you that every patient that I've done this with, I've done it on several, I stopped doing it eventually because I just gained the confidence that it was going to happen. But every patient that I've done this with, at the 1 minute mark, I pulled up the slit lamp and took a look, and that toric marker was right there within a couple of degrees of where it was supposed to be. So definitely this lens had lived up to the claims for me in my practice.
Right. And so anecdotally, right, you had good results with it. Are there also any sort of studies that have been done that show on the patient's eye how the lens is performing?
In one study, it was actually found to have a 99% first lens fit success. This was a study with 47 patients, and based on lens movement, centration, and rotation at the initial fitting, 99% initial fit success. So again, great for the patient, great for the practice, decreasing the time that they have to spend in our practice. In clinical study, TOTAL1 for astigmatism has also provided outstanding overall comfort and exceptionally stable vision. They actually provided 20/15 vision with excellent stability. But for a toric lens, when you look at the science to allow that lens to stabilize and get into position the way that it needs to and stay in position with the eyelid on the blink, the science makes sense.
So Scott, have you had any patients in your practice that you've refit into the Dailies TOTAL1 toric?
Those are definitely the first patients that I've been thinking of when I got my hands on this lens, because I know that really most of my patients can benefit from this technology. But to your point, definitely the first patients that came to mind when I got my hands on this lens was the patients who couldn't wear their contacts as long as they wanted to, or complained of end of day discomfort with their current contact lenses. So yes, definitely I've had patients that I fit from older technology into this technology, and it's been fantastic. Like I think probably most practitioners do, I spend a lot of time at the end of the exam trying to assure my patients that if they're having any problems at all, that please contact me. And I'm not hearing back from my patients who are wearing this lens. I think it's just working so well, they're not having any problems, and they're not having to come back in for additional follow-ups.
And maybe we could share with everyone sort of what the parameter ranges are for the lens. I'll put it up on the screen right now so everyone can see, because I think this lens does have the potential to really help a lot of people who maybe have not been able to wear a toric lens up until now.
Definitely. And as you can see, it's got a nice low modulus. It's talking about the water content, just like we already talked about. You can see the rollout parameters are actually quite impressive, especially a daily disposable, but we're getting plus powers as well as minus. We're starting with a +4 up to a -6. We're getting all 4 of the standard SIL levels. We got 0.75, 125, 175, and 225. We even have 225 lenses in plus powers. Those are going to be more limited access ranges. But shoot, to have any 225 plus powers, especially at rollout, I was really impressed. But in our sort of mainstream parameters, we've actually got 10 degrees all the way around the clock. So it's really a robust level of parameters, especially to receive with the initial introduction of a lens.
Right.
You can see down at the bottom there, we're also getting some UV blocking, class 1 UV blocking from this lens, and we're even getting some filtration of high energy visible light. So it's new technology and truly a new lens that's going to help to improve our practice. Just as a disclaimer, I feel like it's my responsibility to remind us all that UV absorbing contacts are not substitutes for protective UV absorbing eyewear, such as goggles or sunglasses, because they do not completely cover the eye and surrounding area. The patient should continue to use UV absorbing eyewear as directed. Also, there is no demonstrated clinical benefit to the 33% reduction in visible light at wavelengths below 450 nanometers, which is provided by this lens.
And Scott, I'm not going to let you go here without speaking at least a little bit about my favorite lens, the DAILIES TOTAL1 Multifocal, the lens that I'm wearing right now that is making this production possible because I can actually see what I'm doing. So maybe talk to us a little bit maybe about the multifocal and how that works.
Well, I feel like multifocals are another one of these lenses that have been maybe a blessing to our practices. We're excited to be able to offer the technology to our patients. So to be able to marry the multifocal technology, in this case, the precision profile design that we know and love from Alcon, we marry that with the DAILIES TOTAL1 material. This is going to provide seamless vision at all distances, near, intermediate, and distance. As a reminder, the precision profile design, which is the same that Alcon uses in all of their multifocal lenses. So it's generally quite easy to take a patient who's used to the precision profile and transition them to the DAILIES TOTAL1 with the same precision profile design. This is going to provide seamless vision at all distances, near, intermediate, and distance. It's got a smooth progression of power gradients and clear, uninterrupted vision, like I said, at near, intermediate, and distance. So we've had some lenses in the past that were good at some distances, not others. But really my experience with this lens is that patients are able to perform essentially every activity they want to, as long as we follow the fitting guide and get them into the proper lens.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for sharing all this information with us today. It's been a lot, but it's great. You've provided us with a full overview of DAILIES TOTAL1 and the entire line now. Do you have any sort of parting thoughts for everyone before we go?
Well, Adam, I just want to reiterate, thank you for having me on here. It's been a great conversation. I just really think we've got an opportunity here. And if we look at the statistics, too many of our patients are dropping out of contact lens wear. And we know that that's bad for our patients because they're not getting what they want. They're less happy, but it's also bad for our practices because we're not seeing them as often. And we're not seeing them for contact lens fits, which are better for our bottom line of our practice. Our patients need to know that these lenses exist. We need to show them what is possible with contact lens wear. And in my practice, that means putting more patients into the DAILIES TOTAL1 family.
Excellent. Well, Scott, thank you so much for being here. And thanks to everyone for tuning in today. For more information on the DAILIES TOTAL1 family of contact lenses, contact your Alcon sales rep.